The storm was relentless, a curtain of rain lashing against my windshield, making the world outside a blurry, gray mess. Exhaustion was a heavy cloak on my shoulders after hours on the road. Then, like a mirage, a flickering neon sign appeared through the downpour. The Haven Hotel vacancy. It looked old, a relic from another time, perched by the side of the deserted highway. Pulling into the gravel lot, I felt a strange mix of relief and unease. The building seemed to sag under the weight of the storm, its windows like dark, empty eyes. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp carpet and dust. A lone woman stood behind a mahogany reception desk, her face pale in the dim light. She looked up as I entered, her eyes wide and nervous. "Just one room for the night," I said, my voice hoarse. She fumbled with an old-fashioned brass key, her hands trembling slightly. "That'll be room 312, she said, her voice barely a whisper. She pushed the key across the counter, her gaze darting towards the shadowed hallway behind me. "Just a word of advice," she added, leaning forward. "Stay away from room 313, under renovation." But it wasn't the words that chilled me. It was the tremor in her voice, the raw fear in her eyes that told me she was lying. I thanked her and headed down the long, narrow hallway. The carpet was worn, the wallpaper peeling in damp patches. The lights overhead flickered intermittently, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on my eyes. A low, almost imperceptible humming sound seemed to vibrate through the floorboards, a constant, unsettling thrum. As I walked, I counted the doors. 308, 310, and then my room, 312 at the very end of the corridor, almost swallowed by the darkness, was another door. The brass numbers were tarnished, but clear. 313. It was the only door with a heavy, industrial-looking padlock on it. A cold draft, colder than the rest of the hotel, seeped out from the gap beneath it, brushing against my ankles like an icy finger. So much for under renovation. Back in my room, I tried to ignore the eerie feeling that clung to the place. I told myself it was just an old hotel, that my mind was playing tricks on me after a long drive. I changed, fell into the lumpy bed, and let the rhythmic drumming of the rain lull me toward sleep. But just as I was drifting off, a sound cut through the storm. Knock, 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 knock. Deliberate, each knock echoing down the hallway with an unnerving clarity. It wasn't the sound of someone looking for the right room. It felt intentional. My heart started pounding in my chest. Who else was staying on this floor? The parking lot had been empty, except for my car. I slid out of bed, my feet cold on the floor, and crept to the door. I pressed my eye to the peephole, but the hallway was empty. The flickering lights cast the same long shadows, the same eerie glow. Nothing. I was about to dismiss it as my imagination when my eyes were drawn to the end of the hall. To room 313. The doorknob, the old brass handle just below the padlock, was turning. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it jiggled back and forth, as if someone on the other side was desperately trying to get out. I watched, frozen, as it stopped, then started again, a silent, frantic struggle against its confinement. I backed away from the door, my breath catching in my throat. The storm outside raged on, but inside, a different kind of storm was brewing. I couldn't sleep after that. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening, every nerve on fire. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the knocking. An hour passed. then another. The hotel was tomb quiet, save for the hum and the rain. But my curiosity, that stupid, fatal human flaw, began to gnaw at me. What was in that room? Why was it locked? Why did the receptionist look so terrified? Against my better judgment, I found myself drawn back to my door. I opened it a crack and peered out. The hallway was still empty. The handle on 313 was still. Driven by an impulse I couldn't explain, I tiptoed out of my room and down the corridor. The cold draft from under the door was stronger now. A whisper of the grave. I knelt down, my ear pressed against the cold wood. Nothing. Then I lowered my eye to the old-fashioned keyhole, a tiny brass portal into the darkness beyond. At first, all I could see was blackness. Then a whisper slithered through the keyhole, so faint I thought I'd imagined it. "Let me out." It was a child's voice, soft and pleading. I recoiled, my heart hammering against my ribs. It had to be a trick of the wind, the old building settling. I leaned in again, holding my breath. "Please." The voice came again, closer this time, laced with a desperate, heartbreaking sorrow. "It's so dark in here. Let me out." The whisper grew into a frantic plea, then a choked sob, before being abruptly cut off, leaving only a chilling silence. I scrambled back to my room, slammed the door, and jammed a chair under the handle. I didn't sleep a wink. I just sat there, staring at the door, until the first gray light of dawn broke through the window. The storm had passed. As soon as it was a reasonable hour, I went downstairs. The receptionist was there, looking even more haggard than the night before. I didn't beat around the bush. "I heard someone in room 313 last night," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor inside me. "A child." Her face went white as a sheet. She collapsed into her chair, her professional mask crumbling to reveal pure terror. "You shouldn't have listened," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. She told me everything. Room 313 hadn't been under renovation. It had been sealed for over 50 years. A man, a traveling salesman, had checked into that room with his family. Sometime during the night, he went mad. The police said it was a psychotic break. He murdered his wife and his young son before taking his own life. The hotel staff found it the next day. The room was a nightmare. They cleaned it, tried to rent it out again, but no one could stay the night. Guests reported whispering, crying, the feeling of being watched. Finally, the owner ordered it sealed for good. "They locked the door and threw away the key," she said, her voice shaking. "But sometimes he gets restless. The staff. We have a saying, he always checks out late." I checked out immediately. I didn't even pack my bag properly. Just threw everything in and fled. I drove 4 hours, trying to put as much distance as I could between me and the Haven Hotel. I told myself it was over, that I was safe. That night, I finally fell into an exhausted sleep in a clean, brightly lit chain hotel hundreds of miles away. I woke up in the dead of night, not knowing why. The room was pitch black, but I felt a draft. My eyes adjusted to the dark, and I saw it. The door to my room, which I had triple-checked was locked and bolted, was slightly ajar, letting in a sliver of light from the hallway. And from that hallway, a familiar whisper drifted into the room, no longer pleading, but cold and accusatory. "You shouldn't have listened." A floorboard creaked just outside my door. Then came the unmistakable sound of a doorknob slowly, deliberately turning.